It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Panye doll, Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Panye doll, walk on your leg, Kankara water no watching. Oga level leg, gear, pow, leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Panye doll, Chingatongo Pandon could you buy a check out. Papu Panda Jiro, what ya be doll venting. Stand up Panchi America, Panye Dwell, Pancha leg stand up Panchi America, Panye Dwell, walk on your leg, Kankara Watana watching, Oga level leg, gear, pow, leg, Panda with ya, Panchi America, Panye Dwell, Chingatongo Pandon, could you buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what ya be, Dwell venting.
Thank you so much, the technical team of Lagos State Media, and to our viewers, welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. And on this date, in the studio here with us is our guest, our usual guest that most of you are familiar with, as somebody who does not remain behind once it comes to the affairs of South Sudan. As someone that has really invested a lot of his time, a lot of his energy, and a lot of his wisdoms in order to solve and improve the livelihoods of South Sudanese across our three regions. Mr. Edmund Yakani, CEO of SEPO. And Edmund Yakani joined us live from Pibor administrative area, especially in the headquarters of Pibor. He went there on the issues of South Sudan. Edmund Yakani, you are highly welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries to share with us what has been on the public domain, especially for the last 2 to 3 years. The idea of governors forums, which was initiated by the President of the Republic, General Salva Kiir Mayardit, to bring all 10 governors together and talk as the leaders of the country and see how best these governors will implement the revitalized peace agreement and how the livelihoods of the citizen can be made easier compared to the previous years. And once leaders always converge and come together, there must be something that forces them to come together. And to our viewers, Mr. Edmund Yakani will focus much on such forums. What are the benefits of governance forums for the last 2 years? What are the challenges? And if governance forum is not for goods of the people of South Sudan or the benefit of the people of South Sudan, then what is the way forward? Mr. Edmund Yakani will review the previous 5th Governance Forum resolutions, how these resolutions have been implemented or not yet, and to what extent have they been implemented so far by 10 states and 3 administrative areas of our country. And on the same note, he will also talk to the citizens and give us his perspective. What are some of the things, the agendas he deemed fit to be discussed by the governors during their forums, which will take place soon in this month, South Sudan capital city, Juba. Hereafter, I urge all our viewers to share this live show on your Facebook wall, at least to reach out to many South Sudanese who will be willing to hear views and perspective. And don't be surprised, Mr. Edmund, some of South Sudanese in diaspora don't even know that there is something called governance forums. So it is a good platform to let people know what these ideas is all about and what motivated them to come together. Is it simply because they come and live in the Hotel Juba Pyramid Hotel or Palm Africa Hotel and go back to their estate, like those who have gone for adventure? Or there is something exactly that our governors are supposed to learn from these forums and transport it to their state, implement it in order to simplify their leadership and make their leadership effective and efficient. Thank you so much. The forum or the platform is yours, Mr. Edmund Yakani. Give us your opening remark. Thereafter, we dive in to the previous review of the Fifth Governors Forum resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In first place, as I speak now, I'm speaking from Pibor administrative area. And to maybe a surprise to the diaspora community, in Juba, you can't have an access to internet that is so efficient like an access to internet in Pibor. So imagine this is Pibor, this is not Juba, and at least the internet is so nice. So this is what you call the hidden side of a small positive story about certain small positive developments in our country. So I'm in Pibor administrative area, I'm in the humanitarian hub. I bet the internet is okay, but of course, some colleagues from diaspora may get surprised. Pibor and the internet is okay compared to the internet of Juba. So that's what I like to raise. And I came to Pibor mainly because of the governors from. I'm trying to do a practical check because I want to see how much practical were translated into an action in relation to the fifth governors forum resolutions, which were drawn last year. And also I'm trying to check if we are going to the sixth governors forum, what actually need to be the priorities to inform my advocacy and my lobby around the sixth governors forum, which is coming up next week from 21st until the end of the week in Juba Freedom Hall. So I want to be much more touched with the position of the citizens. So I've been traveling around, and my travel, I just use road. So from Juba, drive from Juba to Bor, midnight, enjoy it very nicely, as if the stories about the violence is not in South Sudan. If you see how I enjoy Juba Bor Road as a highway, that gives us a bit of a hope. So I'm here. And of course, as the civil society also is to really have a practical evidence to hold our leaders accountable around the concept of the governance forum. So I say the governance forum have a very good intentions, but of course, political will and political commitment to translate those good intentions to reality for the benefits of our citizens across the country. It is the big question that we didn't realize whether during the first, the second, the third, and the fourth governance forum, and even the fifth governance forum resolutions, since now we're in the sixth governance forum resolution. So I'd like to say to all South Sudanese, wherever they are, who are listening to us in this platform, that this is an opportunity, and I thank Lex Media for inviting me specifically to look into the issue of the governance forum. And as an organization, we did a bit of a thorough evaluation of the previous governance forum recommendation, which was divided into two sectors. We have sectors that are complete resolution under the responsibility of the state and administrative areas, political leadership, and some of them are resolution that have link with intergovernmental linkages between the state and the central government. Some of them are central government. So right now, we just mainly concluded one of a state obligation under the resolutions that were attached to the state. There are about 19 resolutions of the previous governance forum. So we released out the report recently. So I think that's what I would like to say as my opening remarks. And of course, we keep on praying that we hope our political leaders will change their political attitudes to the level that they can act positively for the best interests of the nation in a manner that we live as South Sudanese without feeling any form of discrimination or marginalization. And we feel that our nationality is the center of our unity of diversity or unity of purpose. So that will be my opening remarks. So hope to dive into the evaluation of the fifth governance forum recommendations. To what level were they being implemented by the state's government, and those recommendations or the resolution that are linked with intergovernmental linkages between central government and state government, and those recommendations or resolutions that are directly tasked to the central government. So thank you very much, and I think from here now we can proceed towards our evaluation. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund Yakani, for your opening remark. And we also appreciate you committing yourself to go to the grassroots to find out exactly how significant were those 5 resolutions of 5 governance forums being implemented so far, and what is lacking, like in Pibor demonstrative area, that should be encouraged and you should advocate for to be incorporated into the 6th coming resolution governance forums. Thank you for that. Mr. Edmund Yakani, we will not waste my time. Let's dive into the review of the previous resolutions which were conducted by the governance forums. There was the first governance forum which was done. The resolutions, nobody knows to what extent have they touched life of citizens and their properties positively. The second one, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Now we are heading toward the 6th one. And the 6th resolution will be seen whether they will be like the previous one or they will be different. There was a document which you wrote as Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, that is SEPO, on 16th of this month, 2022. And that document is spelled out clearly a lot of things which were not implemented by the Governance Forum in regard to the previous resolution of the 5th Governance Forum. Mr. Edmund, in that document, you mentioned a firm commitment of the states to the implementation of the agreements. You will tell us to what extent have these governors implements the revitalized peace agreement. And the second one was the end child and the women's abductions wherever it occurs. And basically, the area where you are in is where many South Sudanese always suspect when it comes to abduction cases. That is Pibor. We will start from those two as we will move down to the regulations of movement of cattle. Also, you need to add it to be 3, the regulation of cattle movement. And this one was experienced especially at the beginning of this year up to now. People are still in a deep sadness in Eastern Equatoria and also part of Central Equatoria versus cattle keepers from Jonglei State. Edmund Yakani, I will give you time to give us exactly what were the resolution and what is happening, the reason why they were not implemented the way they discussed them in Freedom Hall 2021. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start first with the intention of having this idea of governance forum. The governance forum idea was triggered with 3 main factors. One factor that have triggered the governance forum is the question of interstate disputes or interstate violence that used to happen between 2 or 3 states that communities are fighting either due to cattle raiding or border boundaries. That's one reason that have triggered the idea of the governance forum. The second thing is really intergovernmental linkages between the state government and the central government, and specifically with in relation sharing of national revenue, what is called national cake, how national cake is shared. the concept of whether we should apply the principle of equal distribution of equitable distribution. This is the second reason which triggered the governance forum. The third reason that triggered the governance forum was exchange of experiences and sharing of experiences and networking between state leaders so that they can learn from each other and they can revive or refresh their political commitment with regards to the principle of adequate deliverance of services to the citizens. As you said, I've been closely following all these governance forum. At least I will say one of the governance forum that its resolution was somehow implemented, and I can say it's a bit better. It was the second governance forum compared to the first one, because the second one was before the breakout of the violence of 2013. That at least its resolutions have moved beyond 60%, translated to a better implementation. And that's where the questions around states having constitutions, states are pushing the issue of revenue, so that it works, and state stability agendas that somehow have worked, because that's before the crisis of 2013. But the rest, from the third, the fourth, the fifth, completely, the recommendations were not so much implemented. So I like to say that's a background where I would like to set up as where the idea of the governance forum come from, and with the previous experience of the previous resolutions, what has happened. Now, speaking specifically to the recommendations of the fifth governance forum, which is last year, because it's an annual forum. Every year they're supposed to hold it, and normally it falls in the period of November towards December. That's where the idea of the governance forums comes forward, always as the end of the year, where governors are brought together with their ministers and their lawmakers to come together with the central government and to share ideas and evaluate performance of a year in intergovernmental linkages between the state and the central government, but also between the states and the local government structures, and discuss issues that are related to either communal violence or better revenue generation or better revenue administration. All those things they discuss around it. The fifth governance forum resolutions was so vague in terms of its language, in terms of zeroing a language for resolutions, that you can easily hold somebody accountable. So the fifth governance forum resolutions was so vague that nobody or no entity tasked to account for the implementation of the decisions that were made in Freedom Hall. And there are really over 50 or 60 resolutions, the which were divided into different levels of the government. So lack of tasking a particular political office or political leader or political entity has made the implementation of the fifth governance forum completely below expectation. Generally, I would like to say it is below 90%. 90% of the governance forum was not implemented. It's only 10% that they have tried to implement. And later on, I will mention this 10% constitute what, as we're going to go over the document we have produced as you raised each single issue that were raised up. First, the first three that you have raised, none of those three resolutions were implemented effectively, completely. Why? Because there were no proper dissemination and there were no proper task of responsibility who should implement. For example, in terms of the parties affirming themselves or the parties commit themselves to implement the agreement, what they decided is that they follow the normal routine of the agreement implementation, establishing the state governments that they have done. And after establishing state government, they have to establish independent commissions, which they have done. Then they have to establish a local government institution. As per now we're speaking, some of the states' local government institutions are not yet established in terms of legislative councils at county levels. They were not established. And even as we speak with you now, I'm in Pibor administrative area. Pibor administrative area up to now does not have a legislative organ. It only operates with executive organ. That means oversight role of the leadership of Pibor administrative area is not in function, it's an absentia. And this gives the executive a bigger opportunity to play around the issue of public resources, because nobody will hold them accountable in terms of oversight. So there's no any oversight instrument around that. So that is only the first one. It was implemented because they were able to establish the state governments where governors, ministers, and chairpersons of independent commissions are. They're able to deliver that. Now, if you look at the second one, that we need to really stop child and women adoption. We have seen less than 2 or 3 days ago in Duk, 20 children who have been adopted by the side of, the blames comes towards the side of Pibora administrative area. And actually today I investigated to confirm, because it's a statement made by the Minister of Information for Jonglei State. And I communicated the minister was able to give me the details. So I was able to interact with the leadership of Pibora administrative area about the case of 20 children being adopted. And I come to realize that Pibora administrative area, its role in order to prevent women and child adoption, it's really a big challenge. Why a big challenge? The infrastructure within Pibora administrative area, it is completely poor, and it will never help the political leadership in the headquarters where I am in Pibor town to reach to the villages where these criminal-minded individuals are. And those children, whether women that are adopted, they are normally not brought to the center of the seat of the administrative area. They end up in the villages, which are very far, and they're not accessible because of poor infrastructure. So the villages at the borders, specifically, one of the villages that I know is very common for keeping such children that are adopted or women, it's a place called Nanam. And Nanam, there's no government in Nanam. There's no police, no administrators. It's only leaders of age sets that are here in this particular area. So that's a challenge. That's why it was not implemented, because the conducive environment to implement these particular resolutions is not put in place, because some of these resolutions really require a commitment of resources to improve infrastructure to prevent criminal-minded individuals from adopting children and women. So that's not been properly implemented. If you look at the last one on regulating cattle movement, as we speak per now, already there's a tension at a locality, which is mainly between the cattle herders that came from Jongole, which they have already killed number of individuals, around 5, in one of the locality villages, and that has brought a tension between the citizens, some part of Juba County in Central Equatorial State, with the cattle herders, which are well armed, coming from Jongole. And of course, these cattle herders are so wild that they don't respect the norms of the communities, and they are really harsh on the communities. And actually, I was in Bor. Before I could come to Pibor, I was in Bor to check and really investigate why is this happening. And I come to realize that these armed cattle herders, they're even not close. They're not close to the administration of Jongole State. They're also notorious to the administration. They undermine the administration because they are well equipped militarily. Even they can defeat police if police of Jongole State want to intervene, or SSPDF. So they are well armed. And of course, this tells you that who are behind are exactly who are the owners of the cattle. Either if they're the rightful owners of the cattle, then that means they have powerful financial capability of bribing and buying ammunition and bullets from our own South Sudan People's Defense Force stores, to the level that even some of the people who are close to them from maybe our security institutions are there collaborate in terms of, because imagine you have people who are cattle herders carrying modern ammunitions in their hands in terms of the guns, and have access to enough bullets that they're able to shoot. And they don't care if the state want to attack them. They feel they have enough capability to respond to the state. So this become a big problem, and that has made the governor of Central Equatorial State give that ultimatum order of 72 hours for the cattle herders to return. And yesterday, when I was driving on the road, I want to confirm to myself whether they return, because normally they don't return during the daytime, they return during night hours. I confirmed they're returning. They're coming out of some part of Central Equatorial State. They're going to Jongole, but of course, not in big number. But still also there's an influx of cattle going towards the side of Magui. And actually 2 days or 3 days ago, the cattle herders had a clashes around Aru Junction where they are burning vehicles. They're threatening, almost like blocking Juba-Nimule Road, because they had a tension with the local communities, and one of them was found dead, and they have to revenge by burning houses and then also harming the population of the Acholi and the Madis around Aru Junction. So that's part of which is come here. So what does it mean? It means the political will. Specifically, if you talk of cattle movement, normally this falls at the, if we talk of regulating cattle movement, then the common triangle is a triangle of Jongole, Central Equatoria, and Eastern Equatoria, which some other climate factors has come forward, like floods. And I was in Bor. This time, Bor floods is not like the floods of the last year, because last year I was in Bor. I was living in a hotel called Ariop. For me to come out from the airstrip to reach Ariop, I have to jump on a boat, because inside the town there's a boat. But now the town is completely dry. The town is not watered. The town does not have a flood. But of course, some periphery of the outskirts of the town with floods. But I investigated, and I come to realize that the cattle is no longer moving because of what is called flood. I think flood is no longer a big excuse. Now, the cattle herders who are outside Bor town, in the periphery of the town, because they're along the river, they're facing what they call a cattle disease called East Coast fever. And the East Coast fever is claiming big number of life of cattle. And cattle herders believe moving towards some parts of Equatoria, like in central Equatoria, eastern Equatoria, give them the opportunity to minimize chances of the cattle dying of the East Coast fever. But also, I think they're also migrating, they'll still get the East Coast fever because it's along the river. So you don't say that either is completely free from East Coast fever, which it requires a vaccination of the cattle. And I think there's a vaccination around the East Coast fever that affects the cattle. So these three resolutions, for them to be implemented properly, it requires political commitment from the state's government, and it requires really allocation of resources to create an environment that is conducive and favorable for the implementation of this resolution. And that's why, if you look at our evaluation of the Fifth Governance Forum, we have concluded by alerting the presidency, because it's a game of the presidency that they want the Governance Forum. I remember last year, the first vice president is proposing for them to hold the Governance Forum twice a year after every 6 months. And of course, really, it's a costly event. It's an event paid by mainly foreign aid money. It's much more of it is coming from UNDP. The Governance Forum is one of the darling baby of UNDP, always in closing the year. If UNDP want to close the year, they close by having the Governance Forum so that they can beat their chest. We have delivered something. But whether the outcomes are being followed or being disseminated, that's not a priority for them. The priority is that at least we close the year with the Governance Forum and they have come out with resolutions that we can report back to our donors that we have delivered. But what we have delivered have changed the life of citizens. None of these particular institutions question. And of course, at central level is an opportunity also for some people to get their Christmas share in the name of funding Governance Forum. So as they fund the Governance Forum, some people walk away with the public money into their pockets for meeting, because it's a matter of 2-3 weeks from Christmas. So at least they can have Christmas allowances under the cover of Governance Forum who have been holding, and people can account for that money later on, but of course, offers an opportunity for that. But initially, the Governance Forum have a very good intention if we have a real political leadership that commit themselves, because that's where we could have hold the governors accountable across the country. That is where governors could have shared positive experiences among themselves. That could have been where governors could have agreed on interstate exchange learning visits or exchange learning events, that one governor can move his cabinet to go to another state to meet with his counterparts, and even ministers could have exchanged experiences among themselves, who would be delegates and lawmakers. But of course, those three resolutions, their implementation, it is completely zero. Of course, maybe I can allocate out of the 10% that were said be implemented is the first resolution. At least we have seen state government who have been established and they are functional, but in the side of the function of the state's government in creating what you call unrestricted political and civic space, that's not the reality. The reality is that some states have open civic and political space for interaction and engagement among the parties in their political activities. Some states are sensitive. One of the states that actually I caught for them a positive results, and it's merely an individual, it's not the whole thing. It's the deputy governor of Jongole State, which is a new one. He's the only deputy governor that went as a member of SPLM freely and friendly to attend an IO event. And he's really attended as an SPLM, but IO were enjoying all their privileges in Jongole in the presence of the deputy governor, who is the chairperson of the SPLM. That is one particular player that has played positive. And contrary to this, if you see 2 days ago in Awil, the commission of Awil Center have to destabilize an SPLM IO event within the center. And while all this is happening, in the phase that when the tension among the parties is increasing the state's level, which is on the 20th of October 2022, the presidency made instructions, or what is called directives, and this was communicated through the Honorable Minister of Presidential Affairs, Benjamin Marial, to all governors, chief administrators, and county commissioners to open what is called civic and political space in line of the implementation of the agreement. But 2 days ago, this particular order is violated in Awil Center by the Commission of Awil Center in Awil Town, and there's no political commitment from the leadership of the state to hold the commission accountable. Even the commission reached to the level of really almost dealing with the life of the Minister of Youth of Northern Baragazali State, who is an SPLM IO. But also similar violation has happened by the IO when the IO detained almost 20 SPLM members in Pariang County. And remember, they're almost there for 3 days, then they were released later. And they are detained almost like 3 or 4 days after the directives given by the presidency. So the violation and the restriction of the political space at county and states level by the governors and by the commissioners, and even some chief administrative areas, is still not something that is respected. So it's political and civic space have been restricted. Besides the directives from the presidency, which directives from the presidency, it may be interpreted as actually is a political leadership decision, resolution that may mount to a law, but commissioners and some governors, they don't respect it, they undermine it. So what I'd like to say is that there's a lack of political will from the state's governors to deliver the resolution of the governors forum. At the same time, county commissioners the same, but also I feel the national government is not serious on the idea of the governors forum in terms of allocating resources for the states to follow up the implementation of those resolutions. And of course, as I said, governors forum is an instrument of UNDP. So as long as UNDP pay much, some ministers will buy tickets of going under the name of the governors forum while the tickets are catered by the UNDP. So I would like to say, for me, as per our current evaluation, the 5th governors forum is not productive in relation to the main purpose of why we have to hold governors forum. So it will become a big responsibility in the 6th governors forum to see the presidency taking a serious leadership, because the presidency refers to president and his subordinates, the first vice president, other vice president, taking political responsibility to make sure state governors and their governments commit themselves to implement the resolutions, and also at national level, they allocate resources, because without resources, there'll be nothing around implementation of the 6th governors resolution, with the experience of what we have seen for the implementation of the 5th governors resolutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund Yakani. Indeed, the governors forum's idea seemed to be a very brilliant idea from its genesis. It's something that gave a lot of hope to citizens, both at the national level and at the state level. Once you hear your leaders coming together, you may have that feeling that maybe your problems will be addressed. But the question still remains, if governors forums has reached up to 6th one now, and there is no any change being experienced by the citizens, then that is where the problem is. And it's good the documents that you have written has spelled out a lot of things. You evaluated, you analyze the 5th Governors Forum resolution, and it tells us that many resolutions were not honored, nor were they respected by the governors rather, and administrators of our 3 administrative areas. Now the question is, Edmund Yakani, what do you think as activists should be different now from this, the 5th one, the one that will happen next week, with the previous one? Are there some goodwill or political will from the national leadership? And what is exactly the relationship between the national government and the state government? Because if they have that strong relationship, it will also be replicated by governors to conduct their relationship with the commissioners in a systematic manner. Can you tell us what is the relationship between the national government and the state government, and what will be the difference from this upcoming event with the previous one? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say, in terms of what should be done differently the upcoming 6th Governors Forum, in comparison to what we have seen right from the 1st until the 5th Governors Forum, I think our Council of States, our senators is a bridge between the states government and the central government. Our senators need to take responsibility of acting as a mechanism that follows the commitment of the national government in funding the implementation of the governor's resolution through the national budget processes. Then also our senators need to take responsibility of moving out of the Senate from Juba and go to the states, follow up with the governors of what the governors are supposed to implement as a resolutions within their political leadership jurisdictions. So within their capacity of leadership, what should they do? For example, we have followed one of the resolutions out of the 19 resolutions, because in the 5th Governors Forum, there were 19 resolutions that were directed to state government at the different areas, peace and security, economy, these were directed. One of the resolutions that was almost 100% implemented by the governors, and they rushed immediately after the conclusion of the Governors Forum was when they were entrusted, the state governors were entrusted to collect the personal income tax, the PIT, from the state staffs and the staffs of the NGOs. This is one of the quickest, you know, this is a resolution which when I was moving the states, I used to call that the resolution of Zakayo. The result of Zakayo, the result of Anania and Safira was quickly implemented by our governors, because every governor ran to the state and he started seizing collection of personal income tax from state officials and from the NGOs officials, because that's a
lucrative resolution.
Exactly. They rush for it because it is cash, and it's a cash that there's no system to provide check and balance how this cash was used. So they really collected good amount of money from the personal income tax from both state officials and the NGOs. But the state officials' returns from the PIT is very low. Why? Because their salaries are delayed 6 months, 3 months. So the return is very low. But the return from the NGO staff is very high, because some states are really having a huge humanitarian response. And all those nationals that are working with them, they have to pay a PIT. That's one of it. And there's a huge consultancy going on across the country. All those contracts of consultancy, 15% or 20%, actually it's 20% were being deducted as personal income tax from those contracts of consultancy and the staff. So they got good money. What I know is that the lowest state that collect money from the NGO staff as a PIT, the lowest figure they have per month that they have, it's only $2,000. But most of them are ranging from 10,000, 7,000, 6,000. Most of them are range of 6,000 to 10,000 per month. That is US dollars. That if you really take it properly, it can make a big difference in terms of building schools or improving status of health centers, if that to be serious. Of course, this money was really been run away. And you come to realize one of the evidence across the 10 states, there's no clear system how this PIT were collected, how they were utilized, and even their utilization, who took decision to direct for the utilization of the collected PIT. Is typical governor and his allies in the cabinet. So in most cases, governor and minister of finance are in charge of the PIT usage, how they're collected and how they're used. And because we have collected evidence that the implementation of what we call the PIT, the personal income tax resolution that were adopted in the 5th Governors Forum, which is really a transfer of revenue sources from central government to the state government, where central government say now this particular element of revenue we are giving you, or this item of revenue we are giving you as a states to take it over, so that you can respond to some of the needs where the governors immediately. Actually, in our evaluation, one of the quickest resolutions that all governors, after they left Juba, after the 5th Governors Forum, in all their public speeches in the 10 states, each governor have mentioned is that now we are mandated to be in charge of the personal income tax. These NGOs, you must direct them now to know that we are in charge. And if anyone of them violates these particular directives, we are going to deal with them. That is the only one that constitutes 8% of the 10% out of the 90% which were not implemented. So that they have implemented. When you realize, when we evaluated the state's usage of the PIT, we realize high level of corruption. Of course, we are an organization, we don't have any judicial responsibility or anything. What we did is we went and we petitioned the Council of States. We petitioned the Council of State that the Council of State should constitute an investigative committee, and specifically the Committee of Finance in the Council of States, the Committee of Public Accounts, the Council of State, to establish a joint team to go to the states and ask each governor to really showcase how they collect the PITs and how they use the PITs. So when we went to the Council of States, the Speaker responded positively. The Speaker drafted an MOU for our collaboration with the Council of States to go to each state and collect that data. So one of the things that we did is that we asked the Speaker of the Council of States to write to the state governors, to write officially, because we want to establish a basic evidence from the governors on how they're managing the PIT. So the Speaker of the Council of States wrote to the all 10 state governors in 3 administrative areas, asking them, send to us information about the collection of the PIT. To be honest with you, only one governor have responded positively. It is a governor of Western Baragazali State. Sarah Kileto was able to demonstrate how the money is collected, how many people are collecting, where is the money, how the money was used. But most governors that are in those states, none of them demonstrated a clear. Even some of them become more aggressive. And I remember personally, I received calls from 3 governors that I cannot mention from which state, because if I mention those states, immediately you know who is the governor. 3 of them called and asked me, who are you to evaluate the use of the PIT? Who are you to petition the Council of States? Who are you to direct the Speaker of the Council of States to ask us to clarify the use of the PIT? I say, I'm a nationalist. I'm an NGO registered under the law of this country, and I have an oversight that is recognized by the Constitution. So I want to see check and balance. I need to prove how we are using the money. So when this letter was written, it became tense. And recently, when the 6th Governors Forum is coming up, we went to the Council of States. We asked the Speaker that the Speaker should, during his speech in the opening of the 6th Governors Forum, let the Speaker automatically ask the presidency that before the governors should present everything, let them present evidence on how they were able to implement the previous 5th resolution, the 5th Governors resolution on the collection and the usage of the PIT. So I'll tell you, my brother, I'm touring the states right now, and I finished the states. I'm now in administrative areas, and now I'm in Pibor. Next week I'm going to Rueng administrative area. PIT, it's a complete secret thing with the governors. They are very harsh. Most of them are threatening. Like when I meet them, they're threatening. Who are you? Why are you following this? Are you anti-corruption? Are you the one in charge of issues of transparency in the country? Why are you following? But obviously, as a civil society, I have to pursue an approach that we want to hold our leaders accountable. So, based on this explanation, it means from the Governors Forum, any resolution that are resource attached or revenue attached is easily taken by our state governors and administrative chief of administrative areas. Those resolutions that have link or have attachment to what we call governance reform, institutional reforms, improvement of systems, and the function of the government, governors are not interested in it. So what does this mean? This means governors want to run the state as their own property, that they can't be held accountable neither by citizen, neither by institution of central government. And that's sometimes when the Governors Forum comes up, you come to realize that some governors are so harsh by attacking some ministers, and you see a clear tension between the state government and the central government. This is one thing. But also there's a dirty game from some of the central government officials. Some ministers are what we call the brokers for the appointment of certain governors. So when you're going for Governors Forum, you come to realize that that particular godfathers of the governors at national level are the one dictating on the governors how to demonstrate themselves during the Governors Forum. So the relations between the state government and the central government, that relations is based on the gain of personal interest. Where there's a gain of personal interest, the relation is okay. Where there's no personal interest, the relation is bad. And that's why you see how Aleu was fired. Aleu was fired in front. And I was talking to him yesterday. I say, oh, Honorable Governor, thank you very much for your term of office. And sorry, you are fired in the face of the Governors Forum. He said, now, this new one, what is he going to present? That's the way how issues. But you can realize that some individuals in the central government, even it's undermining the function of good governance and democratic principle of the state government. because some ministers that are close to the president own the state, and they dictate on how the state should function. So the state should function by their interest. So this tells you that the relationship between the state and the central government is not based on a legal framework. It's based on partnership of some few individuals at the central government that are close to the president, that they can change a mayor, they can change a commissioner, they can change a governor, they can instruct governor to change the ministers. That's one particular trend of relations between the state and the central government. But also there's that level, some governors are coming from individuals that are so close to the president that even they can undermine some national ministers if ministers were asking them for accountability. For example, Honorable Aoud was recently shouting over the giving out of open public spaces close to schools. I will tell you, all schools in Juba town, their open space are taken over by traders. 90% of schools in Juba town, the open space are taken over. You can't find an open space that is there. Even the historical youth center that is in Hainim in Juba, it's already now auction or lease for a Somalian investor building an investment in youth center where we're supposed to improve the skills of South Sudanese who want to train on boxing, on kung fu, on karate, on some small sports. That is already leased. An investor is building inside that space. So we're not going to have a youth recreational center in Juba town. The only garden for children recreational activities in Juba, what historically is known as Unity Garden in Juba town, it's turned out to shops. It's become a space of shops. So children in Juba town have no space for recreational. And one of the resolutions of the 5th Governors Forum, which I think resolution number 6 or resolution number 7, it says, it directs the governors. That resolution directed that all state governors must go back to the states and return all public interest spaces that were given to investors or are given to individuals. But it's the opposite. Each governor comes to the seat, each governor wants to allocate any open public space to his brokers, whether they're investors or the individuals. So this tells you very clear that the relationship, the intergovernmental linkages between the state government and the central government is not legally binding. It's more of a political driven and political shape. So when I say political, it means either a clique of individuals shape that relationship or they control that relationship. So the role of the Council of the States to play its role is a really big issue. But I don't think also is a question of absence of legal provisions that define that relationship. But for me, is lack of political leadership from certain political players that are given responsibility of some offices that are supposed to oversee a smooth and a better relation between the central government and the state government. And that is specifically our Senate. Our senators are not playing their role. Our senators want to play a role like they are parliamentarians and the National Assembly. So sometimes they forget their role of playing the Senate role as an entity that's a main relation between the state's government and the central government. So for me, that weaknesses have not really helped in shaping a better, a concrete, a functional state and central government relationship. And that for me comes, what type of senators do we have? Honestly, I think maybe 2% or 3% of our senators having a physical energy to leave Juba and go to the states. But most of our senators are aged, are completely aged. These are what we call the renowned commanders of Anyanya 1, Anyanya 2, so 1972, the fathers of the current ministers, who are supposed to be in a home, staying and acting as references. They are our senators. You have senators that sleeps out of 8 working hours, they have to sleep for 5 hours. And out of the 5 hours that they're sleeping, they have bigger health issues, diabetes and all this. So the nature how we frame our Senate does not help the senators to play their role because we have aged senators that can't run. Yes, we know they have contributed to the current country we are, but the physical energy for them now to play their role is not there. So for me, that's a description I would like to describe, is that the relationship is not really legally binding, it's more politically shaped, but also there lack of political leadership in some of the institutions like the Senate that have responsibility to follow state governments in terms of governors and ministers' commitment to implement directives that come from central government, and some leaders in central government have influence on how state government should function. Sometimes their interests are real outside the law. So for me, that's the mess that we are in. And now, since elections are coming, This 6 governors forum is going to be more electoral aspirants-driven process. So some governors, the 6 governors forum, are going to praise the president, are going to praise the first vice president, so that when election come, they remain as a political parties bearers. Because one thing I would like to share with you, with the latest case study of Aleu, so it means each governor is not granted whether he's going to be the flag bearer, because at any time you will be fired from your seat because you are not elected, you're only appointed. The only surviving elected governor, but I think now even his election is now subject for firing. It's only the governor of Eastern Equatoria, Honorable Luis Lobong Lojore, is the only elected governor up to now that he was able to maintain, I don't know, whatever power, political game and political tactics he have to retain himself until now since 2010. He's the only one. But the rest, even tomorrow, if we're going to go for elections, they can be fired today, then another person can be brought in as a flag bearer. So with the coming of elections and with the attitudes of too much degrees, some governors are going to end up looting to save money than really delivering service to the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for giving us the inside story or information in regard to the relations between the central government and the state government. Indeed, these resolutions of personal income tax reminding us about the court of wild animals, whom they delegated AINA on their behalf to go and summon goats into the court. So, and AINA was feeling unwell. And after he heard that he is going to bring goats to the court, AINA got up quickly and told them that I'm fine now. I can go and bring the victim and and goats to your court. The reason was simple, because AINA is so much into goat, because he sees goat as a food. So when you are sent to bring food on the table, you will not hesitate to go and bring the food. And that's what happened to our governors. They were sent to collect goats, and immediately that's what informed them and give them energy to talk to the citizen and neglect other resolution. Thank you so much for that. As you have analyzed it critically, look at whether these governors will survive until 2024 elections or not. It brings us to the question of the 6 governors forums resolutions which are yet to be articulated and which are yet even to be written. Do you believe, Mr. Edmund, these governors will have issues to raise during their forum or not? Remember the former governor of Warrap, Alen Ayeng. These governors, their forum is supposed to bring them together in order to articulate the challenges at the state level, so that the national government will be informed too and see how best it can intervene and help the state government. But it seems like there is lack of trust and honesty between the two, the state and the national, the central government. If a governor comes to the national or the governors forum and start articulating the challenges that are facing him, the governor will fear that he might be the victim of presidential degree that is not doing well in his state. This has given each and every governor to come and lie to the president and lie to the national government that I'm doing well, my state is peaceful, we are moving on well, nothing is, we don't even mind, and there is nothing to be done, and there is nothing that even need help from the national government. What do you think about that? You have been there with them, and you know, are there some of the governors that are too bold enough to come to the national forum and tell the government, the national government, that we need your support in this area, the security sector, in the economic sector, educational sector, and health facilities? Why? What do you think about that, Mr. Edmond? Thank you.
Answering this question, it will go so much link with the structure of the political parties that are entrusted by the agreement to implement the agreement. So I'm going to go and respond to your question in line of parties. One, we may expect governors that may come and may somehow be bold will be the governors that comes from the ticket of the IO, because they have the privileges that they cannot be tampered with, because the element of defections in the IO is a threat in terms of they be easily fired, because they know that if they speak, if they're to be fired, the assessment is that once they're fired, they will defect, and once they defect, they will take on them number. So they use that ticket to be a bit bold, and specifically governor like of Western Equatorial State, Futuyo, may be bold, like, because in the fifth governors forum is the only bold governor who was able to question the presidency. Of course, the rest of the governors came with a routine language. Your Excellency, with the God-able given responsibility, where this time God have believed that you are the right person, you are entrusted to run, those, they will come with those languages. Obviously, that language cannot change. They continue with it. It's only Futuyo came and questioned them. How come you say I implement the agreement here, 3 commanders in chief in front of us here? Now, which agreement are you implementing? It's only Futuyo who take attention to the media in the fifth governors forum. I'm quite sure he may remain also the only bold person later on may come out and speak. And even some of the IU governors may be hesitant to play around, because this 6 governors forum is held in 2022. The next governors forum is going to be held in 2023, which will be left to the next governors forum is going to be held with the elections. So right from this 6 governors forum, all candidates in the state's governors position that want to remain as a candidates to the elections, and specifically when talk of SPLM, there's nothing except you have to praise your chairman. You have to praise your principal. You're good. You are God able given. You must remain before us. We pray to God to add your energy, and we have seen how committed you are in the spirit of agreement, and we are urging our partners to respect your commitment, and they should show the same commitment from their side. We may expect that language of soft language of securing political sort of like survivable or retention so that you're not fired, because that's what we're going to be. The other trend that is going to come from other governors, and specifically this may be from IG governors or SPLM governors. Some governors may be lobbying in the governors forum that they should confirm as the legitimate governors of the state, that they cannot be changed until comes election, so that they buy the ticket. Because the case of Warap is a complete, it is just like you're told you are to kick a penalty, then you're told, we are feeling like you have injury in your leg, then start questioning yourself whether you will play very good or not, because penalties are coming. So some of these governors, with the case study of Aleu in Warab State, they're going to be so submissive, because they are afraid that they may likely be fired. So I think for me, that is what's going to describe the upcoming behaviors of some of our governors in the 6 governors forum, in terms of providing coming bold or respecting or standing bold and telling the central government leadership that, look here, this is the way how we need to administer our states, or we want to see our states being administered in this way. I'm quite sure that's what's going to happen with some of the governors that are going to come in the governors forum. So does the degree of the state governors going to come bold in this 6 governors forum? It is very low. Most of them are going to come praising. Most of them are going to come praising, I'm okay in my state, I'm doing these are the developments, and we're aspiring these. And of course, I'm also worried that most of them may not have attention to the overall purpose of the 6 governors forum, apart from having secret lobby meetings with their power brokers. Now, as I out then, I've got 6 governors forum. You need to find a way of showing that I'm the best. I do not be changed. And some of them will fear some national ministers that have a big power close to the president. They will argue with them, and they give. So the chances of us seeing a bold check and balance between state and national government in the 6 governors forum is a bit weak. And that's why I'm worried that the 6 governors forum may end up as a political tourism for political leaders than really sitting critically and checking themselves with regard to democratic principle, respect of good governance, transparency, and corruption. So I think that's what I will say as my observation of the upcoming governors forum. And I feel that we should not expect any boldness from the governors. Maybe only the only guy we can expect boldness is, as I said, Western Equatoria may be bold, and somehow maybe also the governor of Unity State may need to come and showcase his survival, that he cannot be removed from the position with the challenge we have seen of the Mayom case, and how there's a pressure coming from the Council of States about the fate of the governor of Unity State are going to be. And of course, some governors are going to invest on some minor problems in their states that they look at it, they will not really address the hardcore issues that may expose them subject for question. The only good thing that I have seen in the invitation to the 6th Governors Forum is that some legislatures were invited. Maybe the legislatures are going to trigger the debate. They're going to be the game changers if they're bold enough in questioning governors in front of the, and specifically, this may be a case with the state like Jongole State. Is going to be a critical question of check and balance in the way how they operate. Maybe a case also with states like Eastern Equatoria, with states like Central Equatoria, and you may take the same thing to state like Northern Baragazal State. Those may be the critical states that if some legislatures were brought in from the Council of States or from the Parliament or from States Parliament, somehow they may bring a bit of a culture of check and balance in the Governors Forum during the 6th Governors Forum that we are expecting next week, rolling out from Monday. So that will be the response. And of course, also, one of the biggest thing comes is the media role. What will our media play in this 6th Governors Forum? To what level will media expose the debates in the Governors Forum? To what level will the media have interviews with some of the governors that come to the Governors Forum? To what level will media bring other voices that through the media, the voices can be sending messages to the Governors Forum? These are all things that I feel we need to consider, because I think media play a big role here in terms of bringing citizen voices that can be translated into the Governors Forum, and specifically print media that sometimes some of the governors may need to buy newspapers. So to what level will the media play a role? And also the question of the media access, journalist access to the space of the Governors Forum to trigger some debates, to host some debates between leaders, and to ask some leaders to answer some of the public concerns during the Governors Forum or during their presentations. So all these factors we need to consider, we need to work around them to make the more commitment and more live and effectiveness of the upcoming Governors Forum. Because if we want to make the next 6th Governors Forum more live, then these factors are very important. The role of the media, journalist access, response of governors to public interviews from media houses, and media houses exposing voice of citizens. So all these things are going to happen there. And that's why from our side as a SEPO, we are trying to establish a social media space where we can somehow instigate and send messages from our citizens wherever they are across the globe, from diaspora, from within, to send messages that we can somehow post them towards the Governors Forum. And somehow, these days, social media is a big player. Even our leaders are watching social media, the principals, the presidents, you can see them responding to some of the social medias, even they're following cartoons. So maybe we need to use Adija to draw more cartoons around the Governors Forum. We have already seen a bit of move. So I think there are other instruments that we need to start using to create a debate next week around the Governors Forum so that we can see check and balance being prevailing around the host or the conduct of the 6th Governors Forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yakani, for articulating what most of our citizens ought to hear once it comes to the affairs of our nation. Indeed, things might change. Those who spoke with the determinations of previous forums might not be there this time around. The removal of Alewa Yeng was a shock to many citizens, and most especially the governor themselves, because President stated very clearly during the inaugurations of former Governor Alena Yeng that if Aleo failed to manage the affairs of Warab State, then I will be the last option to address those issues. But now nobody knows what happened. And the challenge is the issue of the people that you mentioned, the brokers, these middlemen between the governors and the president office. This thing has really messed up with the system and even the line of the chain of command and the chain of communication. No any information that might come from the office of president is straight to the governor without being distorted by the brokers in the between. These people want to maintain power to show to the governors that the most closest people to the president. And they also want to show to the president that so and so governors are the most active governors compared to the rest. And they use this privilege to settle their own differences and to address their own egos. It is very unfortunate, but we will never keep quiet as the media. We will keep inviting people of your thoughts and other South Sudanese who might be willing to share the opinions on the same matter. Mr. Edmund Yakani, before we close or wrap up our show of today, I will yield it back to the technical team of Lagos State Media to check at the comment section if there are some few questions from our viewers. And if not, then we'll move to Clubhouse if there are 2 or 3 questions before we end. Thank you so much, President of Lagos State Media, for displaying this question. My question is there any duration given to the governors, by the president to implement the agendas they have discussed in their forums? This question is legitimate and it is valid. This question is basically talking about the follow-up, monitoring and evaluation of the previous resolutions as you did as SEPO. You actually spell them out, you analyze them critically, and you arrive to the conclusion of key principles, findings, and also the recommendation. As you mentioned, like 90% of those resolutions were not implemented, which means people basically dwell on 10%. Mr. Edmund, may you respond to one of our viewers? Thank you so much.
You know, initially, the resolutions are supposed to be time-bound. Time-bound, and resolutions are supposed to be directed to a particular individuals or a political entity to deliver. So, in terms of smartness of the resolutions, drawing or writing, the resolution were not written in a very smart way that you have a clear indicator that shows it's a time-bound and it is a sort of like a clear delegated responsibility for the implementation. But that does not take away, because governance forum, in terms of its timeline, is an annual event. It means right from the closure of the governance forum, like 28th of this month, automatically governors have to know that I have a period of 1 year to implement all those resolutions that were directed. So if governors would have been serious and they have the will, and even if the presidents also have the will, the first thing governors would have done is go back to the states after the resolutions were being made in Juba and discuss at the level of their cabinets at states level, then customize those resolutions that have a specific concern for a particular state and develop an action plan of how much the state or how long the state want to invest in translating the resolutions into services or into development or into infrastructure for the benefits of the citizens in that state. So my answer is that yes, resolutions were not really time-bound per the resolution of the Fifth Governance Forum. There's no directives from the presidency, and there's no resource allocated, because resolutions with that resources attached, resolutions with that timeline attached, resolutions with that responsibility attached, those resolutions are vague and they're subject to be ignored, because everybody has a room to get an excuse and walking away saying, no, look here, these resolutions have never directed me, and there's no resource allocated, and there's no institution being allocated to be responsible, and there's no timeline so that you can hold me accountable. Wait, in the next 6 months I will implement, while the last 6 months of the year. So the resolutions were not smart in the nature of it. That's why if you look at a document we have written, we have asked for a real commitment that the presidency and the governors, when they're writing resolutions, the resolutions should be time-bound. It have an attachment of responsibility, and there should be an indicator within the language of resolution that resources will be identified to take this resolution to an action, like PIT. When you say, governors, you are now authorized to collect the personal income tax, and they realize, of course, there's something smart in PIT. It's cash, so they ask for it. So if I to put a dollar value to every resolutions, they will ask for it. But where there's a dollar value, they go for it. Where there's no dollar value, they don't go for it. So, for example, I'll give you one resolution that I really laughed. There's a resolution that states and counties are supposed to do agricultural exhibition. None of them have done anything. As if the little production we have from the hands of our people are there. I was in Jongle, I said, why don't you do an exhibition of fish? See, now we have dry fish living Bor. They're going to DRC. And these days I'm here, they're going to Australia, to some country in the Middle East, the salty fish. You would have done an exhibition of a salty fish market. And now the tarmac road is constructed. Actually, Bor is becoming a next emerging city to Juba because of the road. That 2 hours time, you can drive from Juba to Bor, and the business of the fish. So none of them have done an exhibition. Why? Because there's no dollar value added. They have to pull something to do the exhibition. So they need something that they can collect money out of it, that they can implement. So for me, really, in the 6th governance forum, what needs to be done different is that the language of the resolutions have to be time-bound. Somebody have to be tasked with the responsibility, and a certain dollar value language or word need to be added to the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmund, for that. Indeed, when it comes to agricultural produce exhibitions, it was done in Lagos State last month. I remember that, and it should be mandatory. Like every year, each state should showcase the agricultural produce in order actually to invite and encourage farmers and more investors to invest in that territory. But the question is, are there modalities for the government to engage in agriculture, both the national and the state? We are yet to see them. Other citizens, the only thing that we normally see on social media are their personal farms, the government official personal farms, including president. But we are yet to see the factory or business farm that fuel the market. And we have very fertile land in Upper Nile region and in Western Equatoria. These areas are agricultural hub for our country, but we are not making use of those. But God willing, we will see what will happen. Up to this juncture, Mr. Edmund Yakani, I'm rightly informed that we don't have more questions. And for that matter, meanwhile, we are talking devices accessible to bore towards, but wise not. I think if you digest that question, Mr. Edmond, you will.
Okay, I have one person just joined Clubhouse.
All right.
Comrade Manon, you can go ahead with your question. So we are about to close. Manon, can you hear me? Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you guys?
It's actually regarding the issue of cattle herder in the Equatorial region. This thing is making a lot of problems in terms of political in the area, because what the government form actually is going to do with this, because they need to be addressed, because we cannot continue having this and disrupting the security in the area. Like last week we see that 5 people or 6 people have been killed in Langara area in Central Equatoria. And this issue can be addressed in governor form, because all the governors are going to be there, including Governor Pele. and governors of the Western Equatoria. And also they can exchange their ideas about how the other areas like Northern Bahr el Ghazal with their experience dealing with the Basiria and the Rezekat in terms of land grassing and immigration from the north to south to the area of Northern Bahr el Ghazal. What are the best practices that can be applied in order for the governors to address this issue? Because also is the security alarming problems in the country, and also could be used by some opposition as a way of fighting the government because of this insecurity that's facing the community on the ground. Something that can be addressed through the dialogues and regulation through the civil authority in the area. That's the governor forum going to discuss this issue.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Menon. Okay, Edmund, did you get that question? You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Manon, and thank you, Abraham, for bringing him on the podium to share with us his thoughts and his suggestions. Mr. Edmund Yakani, Manon has really reminded us on things that we are supposed to tell you because we believe you might be part and parcel of the Governors Forum. And the priority that among all this is the issue of cattle herders in Eastern Equatoria and part of Central Equatoria. It was part of resolution of the 5th Governors Forum, but not even 1% of it has been implemented. And this time around, people need to recap those resolutions and see where they fell short not to implement. This is a serious concern, and I personally appreciate Manon for bringing up that questions and letting you know. If you are going to be there, please, you appeal to them. This should be addressed. It is simple and it cannot even take 1 month if government is willing to address and save the life of people. It is not only endangering the people that are on the grassroots now, but it is also fueling the hatred among the citizens of our country. Thank you, Edmund. You can take the floor.
Thank you very much. Actually, this particular resolution, in the upcoming 6th Governors Forum, we as an organization, we have 3 priorities that we need to find a concrete answer. And that's why really, personally, I have to come to the ground and collect primary data, evidence that next week, whether they allow me to be part of the Governors Forum, they don't, I will utilize all avenues that exist. And we can utilize media avenues, we can utilize side meetings, we can utilize site events like what our colleague have mentioned. These resolutions, one, are really the issue of the presence of cattle in some parts of Central Equatoria and Eastern Equatoria that is creating insecurity around Juba Nimule Road and is raising a development of a serious negative culture of hatred among our people. This issue needs to be resolved. It's a simple issue if there's a political commitment. Because the tension is the land within the parameters of what we call safety and protection within the capability of the state is so squeezed. It's not a question of land, it's a question of which land is safe that I can go and farm and my produce of agriculture, I can harvest them, market them, or use them for food security. And the same area is where people want to graze cattle in. So there's a tension that is highly there. So this issue is a very simple case. And also the rightful owners of the cattle need to be really held accountable. Why are they arming these people? Why are they giving them bullets? Why are they giving them guns? That these guns one day to end up as a revolution. You know, it may end up, you may develop a different society of cattle herders that will never respect the state, will undermine the state, and they will do whatever they want to do, and the failure of the states will come in. So that's one issue that I really accept what he said, is that any space we get around the 6th Governors Forum, we are not going to utilize that space for any purpose. This is one of the reasons, this is one of the issues that one. That's why we're able to check what's happening in Jungle on the ground, we're able to check what's going on in Central Equatoria on the ground, and we're able to start sending the signals early enough in terms of petition, message campaign in the media that they should address. That's number one. Number two, PIT. PIT is not money, it's not an oil money. It's a citizen's money that we're supposed to utilize them properly. We also want to make sure that we have a concrete solution towards the PIT, because PIT become a big issue that it is not clear there. So that's one thing that's a second issue. If we have a space, we're going to handle it. Make sure. Third one is the question of the situation in Upper Nile, because it's extending to Fiji now in Jonglei State. And this issue of holding out group of Kitiguang and Aguelec is becoming a completely notorious business that need to be addressed. So these are the issues we need to make sure they are addressed. And the fourth one is the issue of political and civic space. If we can't speak to ourselves as South Sudanese in South Sudan the same way we're speaking like this, then why talk about ownership of the agreement? Why do you check that citizens you have to contribute in deliver agreement if you cannot give me space to challenge you? And whenever I challenge you, you want to declare it as a red card or as a red line. You want to take away my life. So these four issues, any single space we get it officially, we'll utilize. No official space, we can organize side event, we can write petitions, we can use the media. We are not going to be silent. So next week we'll engage on this. So I would like to tell that, yes, I will take his recommendation, and maybe we can come and check and evaluate ourselves after the 6th governance forum, whether we're able to utilize any available space for that. I know we will be denied chances not to have an influence, but they can't close us away. We don't meet them in the Freedom Hall. We meet them in the tea places. We don't meet them in the tea places. The reception of the hotels are going to sleep in. We'll meet them there. There's nowhere. They can't escape us. Completely can't escape us. We're going to really follow them one by one and want to find solution to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Edmund Yakani, for that commitment and for that assurance to we, the citizens of our country. It is always our concern if the people of our nations are not living in peace, then even those who are in diaspora are not also living in peace, because these people are connected with their people at the grassroots level. We look forward to those days, and we will still ask you and some other South Sudanese who might be willing to join you on the podium after the Governors Forum to analyze and see their speeches one by one, and even the recommendation from the presidents and all those governors in order to hold them accountable up to next year, November, during the 7th Governors Forum event. Up to this juncture, I believe there is no question, and if there is question, then let me yield it back to Abraham Adit to give us. Thank you.
We have two more questions coming into Clubhouse. I have Jabril, Kwano, and Nabil Khan are here to ask questions. Jabril, you can go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, at first I greet you and the person who spoke from Juba. I greet you all in name of our country. But at first, my question is this: since the 6th Governor Forum is going to be addressing, my question is: are they going to address the land grab and the internal land dispute that has now causing life in many South Sudanese across our land? Are they going? This issue is going to be the center of discussion, because as I'm speaking to you now, there are many people in my community that are being killed by militias from the both communities, and it seems like the government are not able to address this kind of problems. Here again, it happened in between the ABI and the Church. And the government and the governors, they're not doing that much. What is new are they going to do concerning these kind of issues? I held my mic back to you.
Thank you, Jabril. Edmund, Jabril question is coming regarding about what's going on in Maban area. So that is what that question comes from. So write that question down, Edmund. And let's take another question from Abil Khan. Abil Khan, if you can hear me, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are loud. Yep.
First of all, let me. Someone call me. Let me thank Mr. Edmund for coming here to talk about the sixth governorship forum that is coming up. I'm a member of a new political party that was formed basically to give us a space to exercise our constitutional right. I do believe that the issue of democracy in South Sudan and political freedom as a political organization should be also brought up into this sixth governorship forum. We have seen what happened in northern Barghazal in regarding to between the Asylum IO and the governor. I mean, not the governor, but the government of the northern Barghazal. We don't know what happened, but this alone is a form of intimidation in terms of democracy. And as a person, a new political party that is looking for a better South Sudan, when you came a few weeks ago, I read the issue of a political party council that was shut down in Juba because they were not able to operate to give us, to be able to give us a platform to exercise our political right. So now my question is this: can this issue be raised in this political governorship forum that is coming up? The other thing is the issue of following up this recommendation. We live in a country, South Sudan, where the governor can be fired, like what happened in Warab State in a few weeks before this forum to be conducted. When these things, what are the mechanisms that can be used so that the recommendation need to be followed up, or resolution need to be followed up by any upcoming governor to make sure that what we discuss is also represent not you but your government in that state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abil Khan. Ilmun, those are the two questions come from the clubhouse. One is from Jabril, and the other one is from Abil Khan. So those are the two questions, and I see someone is raising his hand. So go ahead. Okay. Tontat, I have another person. Okay, Tontat. We run out of time, guys. So put in your question to be short. So Tontat, go ahead and have your question very quick.
No, I'm not asking a question now. I'm trying to talk because I already called and I talked to people. They are down there in a wheel, and I know the situation. And when I saw you here talking about it, I came to clarify to people the way Bill was talking. That's why I came up to talk about it, because he was saying that there was a governor who have a problem or intimidate the other party. But what our people don't understand is that the law enforcement is different from the party. The issue is between the law enforcement and the people that were going in there to the airport. That if the police said that the certain rules have to be followed, people shouldn't be allowed there because of crowd. And in the airport, that shouldn't be resulting into fighting, whereby people didn't respect the law. So whom do the police belong to? If the police order that there shouldn't be a certain movement of motorcycles into a certain area in the airport, and if they are told, then they attack the police woman, beat them to hurt them, and now people are talking about that it is the governor, which is misleading. That's why I come to talk here. It was the law enforcement that said if any one member of IO was coming there and people mobilized and pay all for the border to line, coming in big numbers and cause traffic, blocked and other stuff, and the police order that they shouldn't be allowed to move in there. And then people who pay them and mobilize them, they went ahead and attacked the police because they are women, and then, that what caused chaos and fighting between police forces and the people that belong to that party. It is not a governor. And this is how we take the information and spread it out, and then we mislead our country. And then problem came in. I did call early. I called early in the morning, and that's what I was told.
Okay.
And my colleague was there. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ton.
I want to be able to hear that the police forces don't belong to any party. They belong to all the South Sudanese. They are just law enforcement. And now in the United States, you cannot just go to certain area. If the law enforcement say there's a barricade there, you cannot go there today because of certain number, because of security concern. You are not allowed to go there. Then you, a politician, you shouldn't beat up the police if she go.
Okay.
There have been a given by the police. You gotta respect. There are women that admitted, and those women were law enforcement who were blocking those people that they were there. And they were told not to go in. They beat up the police, and the police responded. And now people are saying that it is a governor. It's not a governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tontat. So, Ilmon, you can go ahead and answer those two questions. I believe Tontat is doing a clarification. So you can go ahead. Thank you, guys. So go ahead. I yield my microphone back to you.
Thank you so much, Abraham Adit. And thank you so much, Abiel, Kon, Jabril, and Tontat for your questions. Edmund Yakani, you can respond to those three questions. And thereafter, we will close our show because time is not on our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last caller, I don't know what I couldn't get him very clear in terms of the clarity. I don't know which governor is referring to and which issue of police preventing. I couldn't get that well. So I don't know which particular governor is referring to. And because I don't feel that here I have leveled another governor to be responsible. So I don't know if you get it clear, maybe you can come back with what exactly he means so that I can provide a rightful answer.
Okay,
but some of the two fastest, yes.
Okay. Yeah, let me ask him, what governor are you talking about, Tontat?
I was responding to Abiel Kon because Abiel Kon was saying that the governor, is the intimidation of the other party, and he was labeling that as if it is the governor that have a hand on that. That's why I was clarifying to him that it was the police enforcement that were telling the border people not to plug into the airport, on some condition, and then that the people who were welcoming, who were trying to go to plug into the airport and then receive one of their politicians, respond by hurting the police women. And that's why they end up beating each other. I guess that's what you guys are talking here. And I saw Abiel Kon was talking about it. That's why I clarified it a little bit like that.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you understand. You don't mind one for 30 seconds.
Yeah, basically, Edmund, he is talking about the political space, which was mentioned by Abiel Kon, whether this idea of restricting other political parties to campaign across the country and mobilize their supporters, will this agenda be raised during the governors forum? Because different states sometimes close the political space more than even Juba, which is the capital city. So, and Tontat is like, it is not governors who always close the political space, but it comes from the national government. And then the police, other law enforcement agencies, do and execute their duties. I think that's what he meant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me pick up this to all audience, to all audience that are following us here, is that one, recently one of the areas we have strongly campaigned and strongly issued is the issue of the political space. I would like to remind the audience who are listening to us here that on the 20th of October 2022, which is last month, there was a directive of the presidency, not directives of the president. There was a directive of the presidency communicated by Honorable Benjamin Marial as the Minister of the Presidential Affairs, where the presidency have directed instructions clearly, and in that particular directives, people at subnational government level were mentioned, state governors, chief administrators of administrative areas, county commissioners, to open political and civic space. So for me, from 20th of October last month, the presidency have agreed that at states level, at county level, at administrative level, political and civic space should be open. And we are now building up the report of the first month of that directives, which is coming in 2 days' time. We're going to issue a report. I can share with you what I have seen. We have seen the immediate violation 2 days by SPLM-IO detaining SPLM members in Pariang, and they were released after 2 days. We have seen what is going on now in Northern Baragazal. We have seen what has happened in Awil. Once presidency direct state governors who are chairpersons of security committee at state level, chief administrative areas who are chairpersons of security committee at administrative units, county commissioners who are chairperson of security committee at county level, nobody under the security institutions should undermine the presidency directives. What I would like to say is that sometimes we have a very excusing interpretations of certain political decisions. So for me, right from 20th of this month, we are not supposed to hear again any case of restriction of political space for parties that are signatories to the Revitalize Agreement and even new merging parties. Because when presidency directs, and the presidency directives were communicated by a minister in the office of the Presidential Affairs. Now, if those directives are violated by police or violated by national security or violated by military under the directives of the governor will be held accountable. The chief administrator will be held accountable, the commissioner will be held accountable. But anyway, we are living in a country that a highest leadership of the country make directives and the lowest junior undermine. And we provide interpretations for whatever interest that suits our interest, the way how we are interpreted. So for me, it's a question of political culture, it's a question of political maturity, it's a question of a political responsibility that we want to demonstrate. That will be my answer to the two colleagues who are debating in the clubhouse that I'd like to bring to their attention. So we're not supposed to have cases. As I'm saying right now, in the period of 1 month, we have registered more than 5 incidents as a violation to the directives of 20th. And for me, 20th October is a historical day. Presidents have said political space must be open. And that takes me to the answer around the political parties council. Will it be a subject in the upcoming 6th Governors Forum? Yes. RGMEC chairperson is going to speak. And the latest RGMEC report, which some of us has influenced, have cleared up parties and the presidency to quickly reconstitute essential institutions that have a direct link with the political transformation. One, the political parties council must be reconstituted. The National Constitutional Review Commission must be reconstituted. The committee, what they call the permanent constitutional drafting committee must be reconstituted, because you cannot go for constitution without a drafting committee being reconstituted, must be reconstituted. The National Election Commission must be reconstituted. These messages are going to come again in the Governors Forum. And the Political Parties Act need to be quickly ratified by the Parliament. And then the Electoral Act need to be quickly ratified by the Parliament. So at least those political. So this is still going to remain as an agenda on the latest, which is this week. And there's no any other RGMEC meeting except after the Governors Forum, and the RGMEC chairperson is going to speak. And now he has been making a statement we push that let him talk about let the government provide funding for the roadmap, to implement the roadmap. So this message is going to come up in the governance forum as an issue of argument. So that's what I can respond to that. The hotspots, Maban, Twitch and Ngok. You go to Upper Nile, the Agwelek and the White Army. These particular issues are not going to be undermined in the governance forum. The governor of Upper Nile State, to the best of my knowledge, is going to come with the two cases, Maban, and then the issue of the Kitugwang and then the Agwelek. He's going to bring it up as top security issues that require decision making. And inside of the Warab and Abiy, obviously the Twitch and the Ngok can't be avoided. And don't forget, there's a merging issue in Western Equatoria. All that is not going to be forgotten. So these particular issues will come up. But the question is whether the highest political leadership will take them as a serious issues. Because governors may bring them in the reports. But if the top leaders of the country does not see them issues, they will naturally die in terms of zero resolutions. So to conclude my concluding remark, I don't know if you can allow me to do that, or we're expecting more questions.
Of course, you can conclude your remark, your last or parting shot, I think. Or Abraham, what do you think?
Yeah, before I would like to give 1 minute to Manon having a follow-up question. So Manon, 1 minute, please.
Yes. I think my follow-up question, he already answered it.
Oh.
And I just want to tell him that I appreciate your answer. The political space actually is very important, need to be discussed in government form, because even myself here as a representative of the SPLM IG in the US, we received the report for the last political bureau meeting that SPLM members are being obstruct their activities in the control areas of the IO. So I think it's going either way. In order for those governors to understand that due to RC's agreement, political space for political parties, right of assembling, right of political party to organize themselves across the country have to be allowed and have any. And I really appreciate that you brought up that the presidency already give a directive, and those directives have to be respected by governors. Governors are not above of the presidency decision in the country. They are under presidency, and also they have the governors are the one who managing the high population of our community. And if they don't respect the law and they don't follow the regulation, then they are contributing into insecurity in the country and bring the country back into violence. And we don't want that. I think this political space of allowed political parties across the country to have their right to assembly and organize themselves, it have to be discussed in governance form, and they have to come out with a clear resolution confirming the presidency directive that you mentioned a few minutes ago, Mr. Edmund. And I really appreciate that you mentioned that, because we are tired of all this violence. We need political process in terms of democratic transformation in the country. SPLM is one of the political party, and they can participate in political space. And it is up to the people to decide who they can elect or who they can reject during the upcoming election after the next extension. That's what I need to add there, and thank you for your input. And I really appreciate it. And the governors should not act like they are acting in their own nation. They are under the nation of South Sudan as a republic, and they have also to respect the ALSIS as agreements, and they have to follow the constitution of the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Manon. Okay, now I can yield microphone back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Abraham Adit, and thank you so much, Brother Manon, for your comments. I yield it back to you, Mr. Edmund Yakani. You will tell South Sudanese your last remark and your message, which many people, you mentioned the thing to do with the media. What do you expect out of South Sudanese in diaspora during this governors forum to do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My last message is that if we keep on restricting political space, we are antagonizing our social fabric respect, because we can't respect social fabric when certain voices are not given chance to be heard and certain voices are given chance to be heard. So if we want to maintain or if we want to repair our broken social fabric, really, we need to have open civic and political space. And also, if we want to transition from violence to peace successfully, we need a free and restricted, open political and civic space. If we want us to own the political processes in a non-violent way to take our country to the vision that we want, we need an open political and civic space. That's one message I'd like to communicate to everybody who have a political interest of engagement. That's one thing I'd like to communicate that until there. And of course, one thing is that the respect of rule of law and human rights is very important for us to cut down the ongoing violence in the parts of Equatorial between the pastoralists and the farmers, and what's going on in Maban, what's going on in Twitch, and what is going on between the Agwelek and the Kitgwang in some parts of Upper Nile. So we need to really take that responsibility of respecting rule of law and human rights, so those violence will come down and we will have a mutual peaceful coexistence among ourselves as South Sudanese. With regard to the Governors Forum, I will urge you, our colleagues, brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora, let us take responsibility that we can engage in the social media productively to influence the Governors Forum. So I'm someone who suggests that if our diaspora population can help, it's a question of having a conducive environment around you to generate. Yes, we're in South Sudan. Maybe internet is not a problem. Internet may be a problem to us. We may not have access to enough libraries of readings, of exposure of the latest. I think it's a high time for us to start sending positive messages that help us to shape the content of the 6th Governors Forum. So I want our population in diaspora, plus us who are in country, if we can all agree unanimously that we want the outcome of the Governors Forum to be citizen interest driven, that will come if we're able to use the social media as a platform of exchanging opinion, as a platform of shaping an idea where some people like us who have close access to the Governors Forum can display, look here, this is what comes. So my appeal is, can we put a social media platform by saying, let the 6th Governors Forum reflect the voices of the citizens. If we can have a hashtag, a Facebook page, whatever, we can have a social media platform that we can engage. And some of us, we can find a way of delivering those messages. I wish even diaspora can write their own resolution for the 6th Governors Forum. And then we see how much of it is being respected and is taken into account. So it's an appeal of civic responsibility, civic contribution. If you feel you have the zeal, you have the feeling, you want to contribute, write resolutions, share with us, we'll deliver them to whoever we feel it may take to the attention of leadership as we're in country and publish them in various media platforms. So I'm calling for a media platform. Let the 6th Governors Forum be citizen interest-based platform. Thank you, and God bless South Sudan, wherever you are. And I'm in Pibor, safe, and Pibor is a peaceful and safe, yeah. So whoever comes from Pibor, I'd say I'm at home, and whoever is South Sudanese, Pibor is a South Sudan land, so I'm at home, Pibor is peace, and let peace be with you too, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Edmund Yakani. On my own behalf and on behalf of Lagos State Media crew, permit me to give you the word of appreciations and gratitude for always honoring our invitation and always being quick to respond to some of the challenges facing our country. As many people always say it, that information is power. South Sudanese in diaspora always feel like they're at home because of social media. In that regard, we always appreciate people like your kind who always come to tell us what is happening on the ground and what are you doing for the betterment of South Sudan. To our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in always and following us actually. Once we have a guest, it is your own interest. Once you have information, the choice will be yours. What to do with the information, how to analyze it, and how will you benefit from that information. And it is our work as the media platform to bring to you guests in order to cross-check and examine the challenges and the situation in our country. Back to the clubhouse. Thank you so much for being active always in affairs of your country. It is because of your contribution and daily discussion that inform many citizens who always come to Clubhouse and listen to you as South Sudanese. Up to this juncture, I give thanks to the technical team, the president of Lagos State Media, Isaac Tieng Paul, brother Abraham Adin Majak, and the entire team, Deputy Chair Bol Makur, and the Minister of Information, Gardeng Mabok. May God bless each and every one of you, and we wish you safe, our brother Edmund Yakani, until we meet again next time. And God bless South Sudan. God bless Africa. Thank you.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that thing. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, ban walk on your leg, kankaro water no watching. Oga leg, gear, pow, leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Panya doll, no, chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Papu panda gear, what ya be doll venting. Stand and punchy America, Banyi doll, pancho leg stand and punchy America, Banyi doll, walk on your leg, kankaro watana watching, Oga leg, gear, pow, leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Panya doll, chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Paku panda gear, what ya be, doll venting.